wait till like 40 seconds. I think we'll start. All right, hello, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the opening session of the ecosystem stage at Coalesce. So excited you're here. My name is Amy Diora, and I head up the Partnerships and Alliances group at DBT Labs, and I'm really excited to be hosting this first session of the ecosystem stage. So this is going to be a place today where you're going to hear from some of the most innovative technology companies in the data space. Not just anyone can sponsor Coalesce. Anyone on this stage this week is a DBT Labs partner, and that means that they've put a lot of time and resources into making sure their product is a great experience for the DBT community. So coming out of the keynote, I also want to recognize Deepnote as one of our launch partners for the semantic layer. So definitely check out their booth in Storyville Hall this afternoon to check out that integration. We're super excited about supporting them on that as well. So one of the core pieces of the analytics engineering perspective is that software developer best practices, that analysts should work like software developers and have the best practices from that profession. So we're always excited to hear about learnings from kind of like the product team, right? So excited to have today's session, Minimum Viable Data Product, bringing a product mindset to analytics engineering with DBT and Deepnote. And super excited to have Michal Kolacek from Slido and Elizabeth Dilha from Deepnote to present. So a reminder and some housekeeping, all chat conversations and Q&A will take place in Slack. So if you haven't joined yet, join the Coalesce Minimum Viable Data channel in Slack. This allows us the chance to connect with the remote attendees who will be tuning in from around the world today. And if you're not yet part of the DBT community Slack, you have time to join right now. Visit community.getdbt.com and search for the channel name when you enter the space. And again, the channel name for this session is Coalesce-Minimum Viable Data in DBT Slack. So one thing I wanted to note, New Orleans attendees, please be aware that we're 30 seconds ahead of the folks watching online. So try your best to refrain from sharing spoilers in the chat and understand that there'll be, again, so no spoilers in the chat for the session. And after the session, speakers will join the chat channel 1 to 2 hours after the session to answer your questions. However, we encourage you to ask questions at any point during the session as well. So let's get started. So over to y'all. We have the mics.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session, again titled Minimum Viable Data Product, bringing a product mindset to analytics engineering. And this doesn't work.
I think you have to stand there.
You have to really, okay?
And you can mute me for them.
Show me.
Oh, maybe we have to, yeah.
Cool. Oh, all right. Thank you very much. All right, let me start again. And my name is Michal, and I'm the head of analytics engineering at Slido, and I'll be walking you through our approach, how to bring product mindset into analytics engineering and our workflow, and also about some of the challenges that we've been facing with this approach. And afterwards, it will be Elizabeth talking about how we can address these challenges and what's the impact on the data organization in general if you actually tackle these challenges. Now, I mentioned that I'm from a company called Slido, so what is it? Well, imagine a conference such like this one, or maybe you are in a meeting, and what you want to do as a speaker, you want to make sure that your audience, or maybe you as an audience, you want to ask some questions, and now this interaction between the audience and the speaker, that is allowed by our web application or interaction platform called Slido. We can also do some quizzes or polls, whatever, just, vice versa. And we've been around for more than 10 years. And also last year we got acquired by Cisco. So right now we are on a path towards making a better engagement in the new era of hybrid work. Now, talking about Slido, but let's move a bit about the data team in Slido. Right now the team is about 10% of the company. So since the company is about 260 people, we are around 26 data members. And right now we basically have three main things that we really stand strongly behind. And these are the principles that are mentioned on the very bottom of the slide, and that's learning, collaboration, and minimal viable data product. So just really quickly about learning and collaboration. What is important to us is that we learn from each other, also from our mistakes. And when it comes to collaboration, we just want to make sure that when we work on projects and products in general, we collaborate, and not just within the data team, but also with the end users, which is a thing that is addressed by the last bit, and that's the minimal viable data product. Now, this concept you might actually recognize, because it's been around for a really long time, and it's well known from the software engineering. Now, how does it work, just to make sure that we are on the same page? The core of the whole minimal viable data product starts with user. Because what you want to do is that you really want to make sure that you identify the user need and you understand what the business needs. Now, when you've got that, you can move a bit forward and you start building things quickly. Now, why quickly, and why is it so tight to the user need? Now, two reasons for that. Well, one reason is actually that when you have even the definition of the needs, you might just miss a mark just a bit. And if you were to build the final product to 100% straight away, it might be like a huge investment. And if you miss a mark just a bit, it might become like totally unusable. But with building things quickly and building minimal viable products and iterating, measuring the results, and then improving and coming back to the user, you make sure that this loop is much quicker. And there's also a second reason why that's really, really great, and that's if you keep your user really close to you, the final data product is actually better than if you were to create it from 0 to 100, just without any extra loop of a feedback loop with your user and business. And now, when you think about applying this about this approach to our data products at Slido in our team, and where analytics engineering comes in place, there are actually three main data products that we could identify. So the first one that probably you know very well if you've been around is dbt models, because that's the thing that you provide like clean tables for the end users. Now there's the other one that is in collaboration with the machine learning engineers, because what you do as an analytics engineer, you provide them the data sets that they then train models on and provide additional value to the business. And now the last one, it will be quite a focus for us, is metrics. Now, why is that important? It is really the only one, maybe not the only one, but it is the closest one to the end user. Because there is where the analytics engineer straight away has a direct impact on the end business user with the reporting data. So let's focus on this one. When you think about this approach and thinking about the minimal viable product approach to this, after a while, you identify that there are some challenges, and it might be different in your cases, but in our team, these were that were to come down to fragmented development workflow and the OLAP cube problem. Let me dive into one of these step by step. The fragmented development workflow. To explain that one, let me get back a bit and talk about the minimal viable data product, how it comes into place in our case, in our team. So imagine a user come into you and wanting some metric, just pull a metric, standard. In our team, actually, because we were flooded by a lot of direct messages in Slack, we said, no. You know what? Let's create a Slack bot and just send us what you're after, give us the business need, and we'll think about that. We'll put it into Jira, into our backlog, and we'll just gather all these necessary insights from the business into one place and prioritize accordingly. And that worked. That's great. Then you get to the second stage, we already talked about, and it's building something quick. No, not really. And why is that? Because in our current stack that we have, when you start with building something quickly, or at least you want to build something quickly, you start with developing a metric in a code editor, in our case it's PyCharm, then you want to test the code when you're happy with it, and that will happen through dbt. When you're happy again, then you send it for a pull request through GitHub. to get some feedback from your fellow analytics engineers. And then, when you're finally done with this whole development process, you pull the metric and put it into the visualization layer, for us, Apache Superset. But as you can see, only then, at the very final stage of this loop, what happens is that the data analyst, or actually mostly the business user, come back and see what the end result. Which, when you think about it, is not what you desire, because you would really, what you would really want to do is would you like to have that business user to be within the whole flow with you, giving you feedback as you go. And now we have a second problem, and this is the OLAP cube problem. Now, firstly, what is OLAP cube? Just to make sure that we are on the same page here. It's been a concept that's been around since the 90s, and it is a way, a standardized way of how to tackle metrics and make sure they are version controlled and that you have them all in one place. Now, how does that look? How does a OLAP cube look? There are 3 dimensions, as any cube, basically. And if you look at the example of that we have right on the screen, there are 3 things to look at. So first, it is the time grain, or like one of the dimensions, the time grain. In our example, is the week. Then we have another dimension, that's the region through which you slice and dice. And the last one would be measures or metrics. In our case, that would be sales. So this would be like an example of a really, really simple OLAP cube, and also really small. But in reality, these OLAP cubes get really, really big. Because, for instance, again, like coming back to what we have in Slido, we have 7 domain tables, source tables, upon which then we build these smallish OLAP cubes, because in total they add up to 350 metrics, which is like a huge thing. And just to make sure that we have everything in one place and it's easy to track, and also the lineage works in a really good way, what we do as a next step is that we create a tremendous OLAP cube with 200 metrics and several dimensions, which, as you can see, even from these numbers, is rather complex. And only then, when you have this OLAP cube, we put it into the reporting layer, we have the reporting layer to connect to it, to data warehouse, and then it's served to the business user. But what if there's a user that looks at your OLAP cube and says, all right, it's great that you have sales, coming back to our example with sales. It's great that you have your OLAP cube, but what if I want to see the number of signups in the APAC region last week? Well, not too hard. At least for the analytics engineer, I just add another measure, another metric on the same time grain, on the same dimension, for the same dimensions, and I add another column. Simple as that. The next day, this person comes, it's like, all right, how many signups do we have in the APAC region last week in our low tier? They're like, that's getting harder. I can add another column, and I'll do that, that's fine. But what happens is that with every single value of that particular column, you actually multiply the number of columns in the whole OLAP cube. So with 4 values, you quadruply the amount of data that you get in your OLAP cube. And then this guy comes and asks questions like, and what is the year-over-year growth in the weekly number of unique users that were active in the last 28 days in Singapore? Kidding me, right? So what you end up doing, because that would mean pre-aggregating a lot of stuff, giving like extra dimensions, and bringing the complexity to enormous levels, what you end up doing is probably the worst what you can do. You end up pulling one of queries. So custom queries that you just put into your dashboarding visualization layer, and that simply doesn't scale. You have like no versioning control, no maintenance. You really don't know what's in production, and the whole knowledge and sharing the knowledge is gone. And with these 2 problems, we're thinking, how do we address these? And to the first one, and you've been hearing about that right a couple of minutes ago at the keynote, is A really good answer to that is DBT semantic layer. And that's amazing. That solves the OLAP cube problem for us. But what about the fragmented workflow? Now, for us, it's important that we implement the DBT semantic layer in our team. However, if we don't have a tool that integrates well with the DBT semantic layer and doesn't solve the other problem, that's the fragmented development workflow, without that, it doesn't bring all the solutions that we would be hoping for. So how to unify a fragmented prototyping workflow? Liz, any ideas?
Yeah, can you hear me? Very subtle bridge. Deepnote. If you haven't noticed, Deepnote is sponsoring this talk. I'm going to be talking a little more about how we got to meet Michal and his team and how we actually tackled this issue. So I'm going to assume in this part of my talk that you all have been to the keynote, you know what the DBT semantic layer is, and you all are bought in to the value proposition of actually decoupling metrics from the downstream tools and moving them to the transformation layer of the data stack. So that's what I'm going to do. And let's talk about the fragmented workflow part. So first of all, what is Deepnote? Great question. At Deepnote, we're building a collaborative notebook for data science and analytics. This is what it looks like. We are integrating with everything from your data sources, different data warehouses, all the way to your orchestration, production level tooling. So the value proposition here is that if you're a human that works on a team, Deepnote makes it really easy to share your work with others. They will be dropped into the same environment, same kernel, same dependencies, same data, so you can get right back to work. And you can, as you can see, you can work with people kind of in real time via comments, very similar to the Google Docs experience. For those of you who might not be familiar with notebooks, notebooks are this wonderful paradigm that is really useful for data science and for exploratory workflows. This is our implementation at Deepnote on the right. You might know Jupyter Notebooks, which is another implementation. As you can see, we have a bunch of different building blocks here. We have SQL blocks. As you can see on the screenshot, I'm actually tapping into a Postgres database, querying it and fetching the query, saving it into a Python variable. I then have some Python code to apply some logic. I have text where I can note down my observations and insights from that exploration. I can visualize my insights. And I have this wonderful collaborative layer where I can create this really tight feedback loop with my team. So let's go back to Slido and to the problem statement that they have outlined. So Slido came to us with this problem of, we have the DBT semantic layer, solves 80% of our problems. How do we make sure that workflow is unified and that people kind of come into that creative process? As you might be aware, metrics require a ton of input from subject matter experts, from data consumers, business stakeholders. You need their input to actually define the metric. There might be a different cut, a different definition, and you need to align on that. And so a collaborative layer where you really have that kind of immediate feedback is really important. So let's talk about the different steps that there were in this proof of concept that we deployed. Step one, the team identified key metrics from the OLAP cube and chose the ones they want to redefine in DBT semantic layer. Step two, they used Deepnote as this interactive development layer to actually shape the map. They codified the final metrics definition in the DBT semantic layer, built out a pipeline to then process these metrics in production, make sure all the changes are processed in the downstream dependencies, and they've built out a Deepnote notebook to then serve and explore these metrics. So let's talk about these steps one by one. This is just a snapshot to give you an idea of what those metrics are. And so actually the team was able to take all the metrics that they have in the OLAP cube today and match them to the different types that are currently definable in DBT semantic layer, which has been wonderful. You also get these benefits like the existence of secondary calculations. So you get to define ratios, you get to define things like year-over-year calculations, and so on. First step done. Second step, And this is kind of the meatiest and most exciting part for me. I might be biased. But the team got to develop the metrics in DBT, in the DBT notebook. Deepnote notebook. Deepnote now supports Jinja SQL, so you can write the DBT syntax there. Why this has been such a powerful experience, there's kind of 3 components to that. So one, you actually get to leverage the DBT cloud engine in Deepnote. You get to run macros. You get to test out the definitions directly in Deepnote without actually having to have those definitions first stored in the DBT project. By the function of you bringing that to the notebook, you're getting the power of the notebook. What that means, you rarely just define a metric and kind of report back with like a numerical value. You want to build out context around that. You might want to sort the metric. You might want to visualize it and kind of see what you end up with and then go back to the drawing board. So that whole iterative process is enabled by this happening in Notebook, which is indeed a benefit that you don't get if you use like a DBT Cloud IDE or indeed the other IDEs. And then there's this extra layer, which I already mentioned. If you do this in PyCharm, it's a very isolated process. We believe that data science and analytics engineering are team sports, and so you do need business stakeholder input to really make this a great data product. So you might have your product managers, your sales analysts, your marketing analysts coming in, helping you scope out these metrics, groom them, get direct feedback, and really like get to a definition that you're happy with. Now that we have codified, now that we have shaped out our metrics, we codify them in a YAML file in DBT Cloud. It is materialized view called MV used events. And then we build a pipeline run in production so that all the changes then get propagated in Deepnote and indeed other downstream tools like your Lookers, Power BIs, Tableaus. Cool. And then you build out the notebook. And I'm just going to try to do a quick demo here. Let's see if it works. Cool. So, super. This is Deepnote. I'm writing my Python cell, running it. You can see there's a bunch of people in the notebook. I'm selecting this building block called SQL block. You can see it's tapping into a Snowflake instance with the DBT semantic layer integration enabled. So I'm writing this query. As I said, Jinja now works in Deepnote, so I get to actually write out the query in DBT syntax in Deepnote. I think I'm fetching revenue data for the last 17 months. If I wanted to like really shape this up and look at my source data, I can go into the integrations there on the right-hand side, and I can actually tap into my metrics layer to see what is the grain, what are the different dimensions that I can actually shape up and use in my query. And then once I have the query, once I have the pandas data frame, I can either visualize it and send that to someone, or perhaps I want to apply some forecasting modeling on the top. So I'm actually going to forecast based on this data for the next 6 months. It's a beautiful forecast. And then Robert has finished this, so perhaps he wants to invite me into the notebook and see if we can align on that forecast. So that's kind of it. That's the demo. OK, cool. So what does this mean? What you just saw there is actually our brand new integration with the DBT semantic layer, which was launched as of 60 minutes ago, which I'm very excited about. It's officially going into GA today, now enabled for our Snowflake users over time as DBT expands support for other warehouses. We're going to do the same. This is really something that the team has been working hard on over the past couple of months, working with customers and data teams like Slido to make sure this is meaningful and useful. So what does this mean? As I said, you have one source of truth, metrics defined in DBT. You no longer have to spend time resolving the discrepancies in your downstream tools. You have the same answer across all of your tooling. And then if someone comes in and asks you for like a quirky cut of a metric that wouldn't be possible in an OLAP cube, you actually get to do that directly on the top of your source tables. And so Notebook suddenly becomes this interface that's like really kind of comprehensive. It walks you through the development process all the way to the serving process. Cool, so what has been the impact of this? First of all, speed of metric development went down. As I said, you're prototyping against a DBT server. You get to write code, compile it, test it, debug, all in the same interface. You don't have to context switch between different tools, and you have the tighter feedback loop. You get to radically reduce the time it actually takes to pull these ad hoc requests. You're querying right on the top of the source tables. The team said it is a large upfront investment to kind of do that migration, but it's a huge day-to-day improvement. And you obviously radically reduce the maintenance time and costs. And so this is the workflow in this new Slido world that we hopefully get to expand over time. So you're going from this process that Michal has outlined into something like this, where Deepnote kind of helps you walk through that whole process up to the visualization point where perhaps the metrics is surfaced to a business user, data analyst. I want to pause here for a little while because you might be thinking like, there's no way I'm going to send my notebook to an analyst or like a person that knows SQL and Excel. It's not going to be useful. So this might look a little dashboardy and BI to you. What we're trying to accommodate to here is this like then what stage. As I said, you never, when someone asks you to pull a number, you never just give them one numerical value. You might want to describe how you define that metric, provide a couple of different options of different cuts. You might add a visual, perhaps add a comparison for what's a benchmark value for that metric, and so on. So something like this, a way to easily build out data apps on the top of your notebook, helps you bridge that gap and really create this like holistic MVP without actually having to invest a lot of time and effort into building something that's like fully fledged in production. You might use this to observe how the metric behaves, what the adoption is, and if people find it helpful, you then move into the production stage. So this is not meant to replace BI tools. It's merely helping you kind of bridge that MVP gap. Organizational impact. Analytics engineers now actually focus on what they're great at, which is allowing teams and empowering them to self-serve and to be more self-reliant. Instead of spending this time on writing custom SQL queries, they get to actually document these queries and spend time on the call with the teams, helping them learn how to do this themselves. It fosters data literacy in the broader team, and it also helps analysts and business users focus on what they do best, which is knowing their tables and applying their domain knowledge. And in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a bunch of slides. I'm not going to skip this one. This is my favorite one. So I'll give you. It's my favorite quote now. Actually, just very quickly, as we were doing this testing with Slido and with other teams, we actually realized that it's not just metrics where notebooks can be useful. We believe actually that notebooks can be a really useful interface for across these different stages of the analytics engineering value chain. And Michal outlined these 3 data products at Slido. The truth is that you are actually building an MVP in all of these stages. You're prototyping and testing for certain things in all of these stages. If you're building metrics, you're testing for how do we define the metric, how do we scope it, what data to make available, what's the format. If you're building DBT models, it's also like an incremental process is very helpful because you're testing for all of these different stakeholders and what are their requirements. You need to rally the team together to understand what's the raw data structure, what should be the transform data structure, what do we keep in the BI tool, what do we push into DBT, and you do the same with machine learning models. So TLDR is that I'm very excited about this idea of using notebooks as a tool for analytics engineering, and this is something we're going to explore with the team in the coming months. So if that's something that's of interest to you, please say hi. You can come to our booth. We are going to be over at 3:06 for the next 2 days. We have a panel tomorrow with Katie Bauer, with Benji Johnson, and Niels Werner, and our wonderful Alan Capopiano talking about what actually is transformation. So we're going to answer some big questions there. And then, yeah, you can join the discussion in our Slack channel to learn more and help us break it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elizabeth and Michal. It was so great to see. When we have been working with our partners for the last several months on the semantic layer integration, we've asked them to kind of hold everything and not share anything about those integrations until Coalesce, until we could do the big reveal. So excited to see that happen today. Thanks so much for the presentation. Really great. Visit them in Storyville Hall. Ask questions in Slack. They'll be there answering questions. There's other folks from Deepnote in the Slack channel as well. So that's it for our session today. Next session, 12:30, Legends of the Hidden Data Table. Bye, Hex. See you soon. Bye.